like to spend just a few minutes recognizing the moment. The recent election results have profoundly affected all of us who dedicate our work to understanding migration's effects on human lives, on social institutions, from schools to neighborhoods to workplaces, economic systems, political systems, to name just a few. And we're now contemplating the challenges that lie ahead, considering how to support those who are going to be the most affected in the coming years. And while pundits offer various interpretations of these results, it's crucial to contextualize them within a broader global pattern. Across developed nations, we've witnessed a consistent rightward shift in the post-pandemic era. This trend reflects a common response to post-pandemic inflation, economic uncertainty, and social malaise. As the proportion of foreign-born residents and their children have increased, and as global conflicts, climate crises, and economic hardships have driven new migration patterns, immigrants have become a convenient scapegoat for societal challenges. The narrative is familiar. Immigrants are blamed for job scarcity, neighborhood safety, rising housing costs, and perceived declining school quality, to name just a few. The rhetoric amplified by politicians and media outlets effectively channel public discontent. This pattern echoes America's 1920s response in the last major immigrant wave, reminding us that societies often seek to redirect societal tensions towards marginalized populations. Our challenge now lies in determining effective actions within our own spheres of influence. While none of us can address every aspect of this complex issue, we must consider our own potential impact through research that illuminates truth and challenges misconceptions, practices that support vulnerable communities, policy advocacy that promotes equitable solutions, civic engagement that upholds democratic values, fundamental human rights, and the inherent dignity of all human beings. And obviously, none of us can do it all, but we must focus on where we have the energies and where we have the capacities. Though we won't resolve these challenges immediately, our commitment to this work becomes ever more critical in these challenging times. As scholars and practitioners in immigration and education, our role in shaping understanding and fostering positive change is more important than ever before. Forgive me for using this time to say these things, but it isn't, I think it's important for us to really think about what it means, not just here, but everywhere. Do you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, just second your very eloquent comments.
Thank you. So today we have a visiting scholar who I'd like to introduce, who represents work in the educational sphere. Professor Agostino Portera is a professor of intercultural education. He directs the Department of Educational Science and is head of the Center for Intercultural Studies at the University of Verona. He obtained his PhD at the University of Freiburg in Germany and was a visiting professor at the University of Würzburg, London, and the OISE in Toronto. So he has an international perspective. He has published 10 books and numerous articles on immigration, identity, intercultural education, and intercultural competencies. His latest books, Educazione e Pedagogia, interculturale, forgive my accent, means intercultural education and pedagogy, and educational and intercultural identity, written with Z. Bauman. And then he's also currently editing a book for Rutledge with C. Grant entitled Multicultural and Intercultural Education for the Global World. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us.
Yes, thank you. I may stand up so that everybody can see me better. So thank you very much, Professor Carola Suarez Orozco, for this invitation. It means a great pleasure and also a great honor of you being here. I came here about 5 years ago just to visit the university. So I am so happy now I can deliver a speech and I can reflect openly with you about the thing that's also important to me, but I think also for your work of this changes. Thank you also to every one of you for attending this class, and I think to the people online, because there should be also somebody connected online. So let me start with something emotional. This is the city where I am living. The city of Verona. This is a medieval city, but was a Roman city. What you see there on the left is the Roman bridge. And you see here, this is Julieta's house from Shakespeare. You may know, was in Verona. So when we say Verona is the city of love because of Juliet and Romeo, but also other stories. And this is a small Colosseum. Then we have smaller compared to Rome, of course. We call that Arena di Verona, and every summer they perform opera. So free, if somebody likes opera. And the last one is this for medieval Castello Vecchio, we call that. They're all the castle. This is from the Scaligian. So let me start with a short, roughly agenda. So you know what I will speaking today. I will start with the main changes in our time, very briefly, of course, because it's good to take the whole lesson. Then I will present my research, my identity development in multicultural context, which means immigration context from Italian youth to Germany. This is a little bit focused. Then, Then I will move to intercultural competences in education, and I will dedicate a bit time to explain or to try to clarify the different terms. We have three main terms that we use all over the world: transcultural education, multicultural education, and intercultural education. And perhaps you understand I am a fan of intercultural education, but we will see. We will discuss often, of course. And if it will be time, I would like to present also the results of studies from the Center for Intercultural Study in Verona on intercultural competences. So first the theory and then practical action. And if you have questions, so understanding questions, please raise your hand and we can answer during the talk. Critical or other question, I will be happy to make at the end of the presentation. Okay, so let's start with the main changes. It was already mentioned, the book that I brought with Sigmund Baumann is a very well sociologist in Europe, but I think not just in Europe. And we try to combine sociology and education. And those are, in our opinion, the main changes that we are facing today. So first of all, of course, globalization and interdependence. We are related with all over the world. Then Heidegger in Germany talked from planetary era. So we are also, and then McLuhan, you know, from Toronto, that was a linguist from a global village back in the 70s. So 1970, thank God, this was not. And Baumann, of course, I would say invented the word liquid, pure society, pure law, pure way of being. He said the world became liquid modernity. And then another author from the UK is Bergman. Yes, Abner. Okay. That one speaks from hurried culture. We never have time to think we have to rush, and a novice culture as well. And we have to start all the time. The past was not like that. So you see, it's kind of a revolutionary change, which affects our life and our way of working, of course. So as consequence of globalization and all these changes, our society became more and more multicultural and multi-ethnic. I am not talking for multiracial. If you're interested, we can discuss about that, because I think it's so not easy word to use. And in Europe, we try to avoid the word race, at least in scientific terms. So the diversity became the norm, not just the exception anymore, and also migration is the norm. So the question today are which are the positive and negative aspects from these changes, and the question is if migration and living a multicultural society it's a risk factor, it's negative, or it could be a chance. There are many theories. And you will see in intercultural education as one of the purpose, that diversity could be a chance, could be based for enrichment. And yeah. So first of all, as I said, I will briefly, because it was a very, very broad research, present the results of the research on identity. So I am going to go reflect with you together on identity. Here are some of my publications. The first one was in Germany. You see, I used the word intercultural identity. I think I was one of the first. And then in Italian, I call it tesori sommersi, hidden treasure, we would say, because everybody talk negative about migration and changing. I would like to give a contrary statement. And in English, this is one of the article. But online, I am sure you will find lots of publication, or I will be happy to share with you if you're interested. So methodology was a qualitative research with deep, long-term case studies. I used semi-structural interviews on methodology, and I try to combine elements from the person-centered approach. I don't know if you're so familiar, but I think more or less in US. And also I consider the social context as social, I think it's so important to see the person, but also the environment, the society where they are living. And I am sure you know Bram van Brenner. So I had 23 youth from Italian origin, which lived in Germany, but also they came back because this back immigration is also important. It was not a representative, of course, but I tried to make it a sample so different as possible. So in terms of gender, social status, and so on. And I tried to interview young people which seem to try to have advantages from migration and living abroad, but also some more disadvantages, that problems in school, or sometimes also psychological disorders, or the social disorders. So, in fun thing, and yet now as a synthesis, is that migration and living a multicultural society is a stress factor we cannot avoid. It's more difficult for people that are going abroad, speaking another language with other culture, but cannot be associated as cause of the illness, as the disease. It's not possible to say because of immigration they became ill. And what was important as a result, it's very central are the strategy that we use, or the person uses as coping or defending strategy. They are much more important. And so that's from the biography, from this life history, I could take out some risk, some negative factors, and some positive factors. Also some coping strategy, but I am not talking today because about coping strategy is a bit more complicated. So let me perhaps begin with the negative factors. There are, I think, altogether 10, not much. But first of all, I think it's important for people that are working in immigration so thrilled to see that human beings are not just migrants, they are also human beings. And so that we should avoid to be blended from this cultural or ethnic differences. There are many factors that are going beyond the cultural differences or migration, like natal, perinatal, the difficulties, chronic difficulty, some diseases. We cannot say everything is cultural, so it's important for me to consider. And the typical cultural difficulties, separation was a big problem for many youth, and not just because of the separation, but the way how this affects the separation. They were not prepared for the separation, or sometimes they didn't have contact. In Germany, they're told from Kofferkinder. I translate it as baggage children. Yeah? You take away the children as they would be without say a word. If you imagine, this is really could be a bit traumatic for children. Then this affects much more Italian, so youth with Italian origin in Germany is a pendolarismo, commoting. There's a frequent changing between Italy and Germany. The children have some problem, for example, in Germany, and then parents say, oh, let's go back to Italy because Italy is so beautiful, and they understand. But after some time, they had problem in Italy, and they took back then in Germany, and this is so negative. Then another one, the ambivalences. Of course, a different cultural behavior between school and parents, but also sometimes in the family, between the mother and father, or between the children, so the sisters and brothers, and so on. Another is the social marginality, because migrants, most of the cases, they are under Unterschicht, they're called the unterste Unterschicht, so under the level, they say that the German. And the discrimination of Italian is not so much like from the Turkey or other country, but it's a subtle discrimination sometimes. To part isolation, language problem, very strict educational approach. You would need a lot of time that because parents, Italian parents, they plan to go back to Italy. So they try to educate in Italian values, but sometimes those values are not more actual even in Italy, even in south of Italy, and they don't realize that. And then also the bicultural orientation. And the problem is not the bicultural orientation, but instead the way our teachers or the parents or the friends, handle with that. The question, are you Italian or German? For example, do you like more Italian or German? This is a loyalty conflict, and this be forced to choose. I think this was so negative, and was not possible to integrate. So in these cases, there were many crises. So migration and living in multicultural society was more associated with problems and with disturbs sometimes. Is this okay, or I am going too fast? Please interrupt me if something is not clear. Yeah? Okay. On the other side, we could experience some protective factors that affect the life of this youth. Personal, again, not related to culture. Gardner talks from multiple intelligences. I think we have that, or more or less, or making contact facilities, or the learning language easily. I think they are not related to migration, and that they are more related to migration on the secure bond and relationship. We know from the literature, from psychological literature, this mother-child bond is important. In my research, I found out must not be necessarily the mother. Could be also, I don't know, the grandmother, could be an aunt, somebody else. Important is the relationship. The children experienced this, also this kind of deep relationship. Then parents' openness toward the German environment. So in many cases, they say, we don't go along with the German friends, for example, or look at the Germans, they are all this or that. In the understanding and trust from the parents, and so also preparation for separation, preparation for immigration. This This was very, very important. Then we have on the other side, so the German part, so said few students, a few teachers or friends, also acceptance and respect was very important, understanding and no assimilation pressure. No? You are a good student if you behave like this, or a big question was often to make exclusion, you know, because for some parents, they were not so easy to say, okay, you stay overnight, especially for young women, you know, and things like that. And then the rule of the friends as bridge. You know, this was very important. If there as immigrant they could cope effectively in an immigration situation, and also support from educational institution, counsel, mediation, psychotherapy, external support was very, very big, so important. Okay. And all in this case, a multicultural, so living in multicultural context and also migration was more an opportunity and not a risk factor. So for this, you who experiences more the positive aspect. Okay. Then if it is not too much, I was afraid, I was thinking today, I would like to present you another theory because I ended my research with this theory. I didn't have time to work forth on that, but it's very, very new, of course. But I do believe, so this, I am trying always to answer the question of immigration, living in multicultural context, is something positive or is a risk, you know? And at the end, I came to a conclusion of what many other authors went, like Maslow, and I developed a theory of universal human needs. You know, we all have some needs, okay? The problem is, I will say later, if we can satisfy this need with other person or not. So which are the needs that I could find out from the sample that I made the interview? First, and they are related to other, of course, theory. I didn't get anything, just some needs perhaps I had. Yes,
universal
please.
human needs across all human beings, or particularly for immigrants?
I think all human beings have human needs. That's
but maybe intensified with displacement and the diaspora?
yes, or the difficulty in some places to satisfy those needs. If I don't speak, if I am isolated, we connect with a negative factor. If I cannot speak very well, or if I behave differently, because cultural, some culture are more passive, some are other more active, some culture are more individualistic, some are collectivistic, and we cannot explain to the youth, and the youth cannot explain why they behave like that. Aggressivity, for example, is very, very much cultural bonded. You know? How can I be aggressive? And how much is a lot in the society? There were lots of misunderstandings, and often we use aggressivity to fulfill some need. We can discuss on that. I would be so happy because I finished there. I work now in education, and this was more related to psychology and to treat of disturbance. And I am a clinical psychologist as well for my first degree, and of course, I have this part of identity. So first of all is the physical well-being. We do have a body. Sometimes we forget, especially in the academia, but we do have, we need to eat, we need to walk, we need to sleep and so on. Then social relation so important, is a need for every human being, and the belonging, to feel part. And this is more related to migration than bonding, as we said, and we have many studies in psychoanalysis, so Freud, Madame Kahn, von Bronfenbrenner also. Separation, that's a surprise sometimes, because we know about bonding, but I think separation is also a need, because other way we would remain a child all the life long. If all the time we have to ask you advice to other people, no? It's also a need. This would be the full autonomy from bonding, you know, Erickson also spoke from desatellization, like satellite. Then we do, I don't know if you agree with that. We do need a structure. I think this is so limits are also important in our life because if you look to autism, for example, the children, they're looking for border because, and I think it's a big problem today. This yes culture, not try to avoid stress. But we can reflect together if you like later on that. And then what's you see all the three of here they are related with humanistic psychology, of course. Rogers talk it says therapy or counseling is effective if these three variables are used. In my research, I could find those three variables are fundamental human needs. This is my impression to have a positive regard from other people and to be accepted is so important for everybody. Empathy is important that other people listen to us and understand what we are saying. There's a language or which behavior, but also congruence, I think, this be authentic. A relationship with human beings, they are authentic. They give us truly and honest feedback, even if negative, so that we have a correction. Then trust is important. We know from the literature, from Erickson, of course, but and then for me is active, and this is much related with English, active participation. If I don't have the opportunity to change the world where I am living because I have immigrant, I have not worked, for example, this is a big issue. We exclude immigrants, they're living so long in our countries. I take Italy together, of course. And this is, you belong not to wars. I think it's very, very, very difficult. Human being. And then the last one, perhaps, is not easy to understand. I call that a continuity. And somebody would say, continuity, then every migrant cannot satisfy this need. But the meaning is not like that. For me, continuity is, can you remember the forced assimilation? It's much related to this, that nobody forced me to be diverse as I am, as my identity is, okay? We can interact, we can discuss if somebody not agreeing, but not be forced from parents or from teachers or from people who have the power. That's the problem for many youth over this was, but I think it's still, I make the interview. I don't know if this in this short time more or less clear. Yeah, you don't know. Oh, thank you. Go on, that's wonderful. So I don't have a little more time. So that's which is the problem. The problem, as I said, that we do have all as human beings some needs, but to follow the fulfillment, so to satisfy such needs is difficult because several negative factors. Can you remember? Sometimes it's objective negative. Different coping strategy, as I said, aggression or the talking or not talking because the other should understand. They say we have all strategy and we cannot find those strategies in dictionary. Nobody tells that. That's the problem. And also because of diverse educational models. If you think just about authoritarianism with democracy or lassism, and they are very, very different models in different countries and in different time, I would say. So the risk is in many cases of being misunderstood and from crisis and asocial behavior and also disorder. Also, I could make my research some association. I don't know if I can say this sometimes, for example, I saw that I am not criticizing Boston, please. I don't know, but no, because it's not polite. It's not polite. I'm just observed, okay?
Every place can take
in every place, in Italy, there are other. Well, no, and I saw was, I think, this morning and yesterday there were two drunk men, and they were just talking and talking, a bit shouting, so. No, and everybody was afraid. The people went away. This is the natural reaction. But in my opinion, related to their needs, they need to communicate. They need just contact, just that they didn't as a regular form of interact because of alcohol, because of other I don't know where living state. So that was the only way, but there's other contact. One of the kids that I was interviewing was a woman, so a girl, Italian origin, and she, after long psychotherapy, not with me, but after long trying to integrate her, she went to drugs and to prostitution. And I had the opportunity, because it was long term, I know her before, she chose to talk with her. And she said, you know, in this group, I am somewhere. I can now say, okay, I am a drug, I don't know, dependent, I am a prostitute. So I have a kind of identity. I have identity and I have a group where I belong. Now, for me, that's very hard. Then I understood, be isolated, really, that people don't interact with us can be so destroying for not just identity, but for psychological health. That, you know, and if we don't understand, there was Lang make also an example in this direction. If we try to communicate it and people don't understand the second, the third, then we're shouting because spontaneously, if we don't have, of course, other goals. But in case we can discuss that later. So, and the difficulty to find an identity, another problem, stable identity, was that many youth were more oriented to Italian culture, other to Post culture, to Germany, and same as this ambivalent. They didn't know where they belong. So, in my opinion, because of this situation, I think what the need would be to let interacting, and I am talking later about intercultural, okay? But now I call that intercultural identity, which take into consideration all parts. We don't need to remove a part of it for being accepted. I think this is so important, especially in immigration, because they become so different values sometimes, and so different impulses. So, that's why, for me, we should start on education. I think education is the most important, I said, weapon that we have today. Not that they are not, you know, guns or bombs or whatever we think we destroyed, but education, through education, we can change the human beings, and we can change the society, and we can change the world. The problem is even today that we invest not enough, or very, very, very little on education. And I think there's a big misunderstanding. You know, in which time and in which society they invest a lot of education in dictatures, communist and fascist literature, and theocratic regime. They say, oh, okay, I educate you, you should become a good communist, a good fascist, all that things. And we think in democracy, everybody should be free, everybody should be happy, so everybody should do. And there is a big misunderstanding. We need exactly, or especially now, the education. This is my opinion, we can discuss on it. But why it is so important, education? It is important to go beyond dogmatisms. No? We cannot say, because education is not manipulation, of course. And we should be aware of some traps, like moral relativism, neoliberalism, for example. It's, I don't interfere. Today it's very popular. I don't interfere in your life. I don't want. Yeah, but what is this? As human beings, we need this limits, this advice, this feedback from other human beings. Spontaneism, I think, is another problem. Carpe diem. In Italy, we say, vai dove ti porta il cuore, where the heart feels, I said in Verona. Say, follow your instinct so you will be happy. I don't think this is the only, of course, we should not suffer as the children in the past, but just looking for happiness without being aware of other human beings, of the environment where we are living, of the limits of our life. I don't think it's enough. And then another point, but I am not going to talk now, is standardization. I think some rules that we have in academia I think they are not real related, but I know it's very controversial about that. We would need a lot of time. Of course, we need measurement, things like that. But the question is, how do we measure human beings? How we measure efficiency with human? They are not just product. Education is not just a product. I cannot say, okay, you come in my seminar 6 months, and after 6 months you should have this. Okay, if you like, we can discuss on this critical as well. But for me, as education, we need to rethink education as well, because most of the theory, they are at least monocultural. That's the problem today. We cannot just take the old theories, even in psychology, identity and other theory, and use today. We have the situation, the world has changed. So we should elaborate, we should think about new strategy in education today, because the situation is difficult. And for me, the best, as I said, is this intercultural education. So what is the meaning from this word intercultural? To me, the intercultural approach is a revolutionary approach, because it's not just a small change, it's not just a phrase change, but it's really the way of thinking, which is a revolution. And I try to summarize in 2 main points, which is for me the revolution. First of all, the view of identity and also culture. Culture and identities are viewed as dynamic, not more static. If we think under research, the question then what we ask today, are you Italian or are you German? Are you American, for example? And we don't think those are static categories. Those are categories which count perhaps in geography, in the politics, but not human being. Human being as a human being, we change always our identity, like the genes, we change the gene. And so identity are dynamic. The second, migration, diversity, living in multicultural context can be a problem, of course, we saw by the youth, but depends on the intervention, depends on the education mainly, if it became a chance to take advantages, to be enriched, as it said, single person, society, and culture. Is this understandable? Yes, thank you. And now this is the most important slide about intercultural education. You see the 3 terms. I don't have the time to go deep on that, but and the 3 terms, the intercultural education take into takes into consideration both previous concepts. So the oldest concept is the transcultural. Trans means going through. Today we talk about global identity, for example, global citizenship. This is very popular, and this is good, of course, because we try to take into consideration communities between human beings, to develop common values, common rules, the Universal Declaration for Human Rights, for example. So the intercultural approach said, okay, this is positive, okay? But it has some limits, of course, the transcultural. It doesn't consider, for example, the single culture, the differences, and then the question is, who decides what is universal? Even the so-called Universal Declaration for Human Rights, some Islamic countries don't agree because they have more group identity and not individualistic. And the intercultural education takes into consideration also the multicultural approach, which is mostly spread in the US, mostly used in education. Multi in Latin means many. This is the meaning is that I will try to understand differences and to respect difference. And this was a huge achievement here in the US in the 60th and 7th civil rights movement. And in Europe, we took this approach because it's fantastic. You have the right to be different, but should be treated as equal, as human being. This was, I think, fantastic. And intercultural education take this also into consideration, but not just this, because say, okay, but in the multicultural approach, I can judge if I don't agree with something. For example, just extremely, if you use violence, I cannot say in education, okay, I understand you and I respect you. If you disturb other human being, education is related with changing. Not just, this is, I think, the big misunderstanding in the multicultural approach, and not just knowing and respecting. Perhaps in ethnography, is this possible? Because I just described, but in education, you have to promote changing if you better development. So you see, but the intercultural approach takes into consideration both previous and this positive part, but on top of that, add something new. This was the revolution. And what is new? First of all, meeting. It is not enough to know and to respect. We should try to put in contact with each other through empathy. Can you remember congruence, we said, and I have to be honest, not just say, oh, yes, because you are immigrant, okay, I help you, or I agree with you. Dialogue is so important, and we need to develop dialogue. Dialogue is not just talking us with that, but a way of interaction. I tell you my opinion from Latin. Dialogue is two opinion, we could say also more opinion. Okay, then I try to express in correct way my word, view of the world, my opinion, but I give you also the chance, okay, to express your opinion, and then we can interact. Yeah? Intercultural means interaction, action in action. This exchange. This is the big, I would say, advantages. In this way, intercultural education is related with conflict resolution. This is huge need today, I would say. Nobody teaches us how to treat it. We try to avoid it. From the past, we know this strategy. I try to avoid. I try not to speak with people that are drunk. Of course, it's dangerous. I will not criticize the people that don't help, of course, but to understand the phenomenon. But for the single human being, it's terrible to be isolated. Nobody talks, nobody looks in the eye. To be excluded, to be alone, even if it is together with, I don't know, 100 other human beings. I think it must be a terrible experience for a person. Yeah? Okay. If it is okay to have some questions, yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Clarifying question.
Yes, thank you, Carola.
Is Gordon Allport's work a fundamental premise for intercultural education? The idea that we need to understand one another, work with one another. Is that a fundamental theory underneath intercultural education?
Yeah.
It seems to.
Yes.
Intuitively, it seems like it would be.
Yes.
I just wonder
Yes.
if intercultural
Yeah.
education is premised on Allport's theories.
Yes, yes, you're right. It's very much related to sociology, symbolic interactionism. You see, you find again this word interactionism, because the goal of intercultural education or intercultural behavior is not to find a solution. The process is important. It's like in democracy. Should be not like in a multicultural society, living in peace, side by side. I stay in my villa, wonderful, and you can sleep on the street. So I am a bit provocative, but try to treat in contact with the other. I don't know if I am understandable, because the multicultural said, okay, you live in peace side by side, which is a big achievement, as I said. But the history told us it is not enough. It's not enough. It doesn't work for a long time, because it will be somebody's love. If somebody disturbs me, for example, in the urban, what shall I do? I cannot say, okay, let's talk, let's come and drink a coffee. It's impossible. So that's why I say we need to develop a strategy for conflict resolution. And this strategy are related with interaction. I don't know, you have interaction or not
It's
all the
dialogue,
time.
it's empathy, it's perspective taking, it's working together, it's.
And given the opportunity to talk, even, when perhaps I can tell you a very small anecdote. When Freud came to the US, he said, bring in the US the pest with the psychoanalysis. He said that, and he was invited in a prestigious university. It was not Harvard, but it was less prestigious, but so I don't know. Okay. And then he was starting a big conference with hundreds of people. And there was one person who stand up, walk, talk, disturbs everyone. So the chair said, please don't disturb, please sit down, please stand. And then this again and again and again. Then the security came and brought this person out. Yeah? And Freud said, let this person to speak. Let this person speak. You know, this is sometimes let the opportunity to express themselves, whatever before you intervene. You know, this is a lack of communication and interaction. Because if you don't know, sometimes they will ask a question in this direction and goes there. Interaction. Of course not, we can discuss on it, not always, because sometimes on the metro, for example, it's not always possible, but to have as concept when and if it's possible, I think we choose to go beyond the multicultural, transcultural model and try this interactive. Okay, this is my opinion, but we can talk on it. Okay, and as I was expressed from Professor Suarez Orozco, this was one of the first books that I published with Carl Grant, is very well known, is a multicultural education. So we have different opinion, but we are still friends. You see, we can have in democracy different opinion. And it was
engaged in dialogue.
Yes, right, without finding an agreement, because it's just to know there is a different opinion for me is an enrichment, not necessary to change the mind. So, and then, as I told you, we have 10 minutes left. If you are not too tired, if you are too tired, please tell me, and I can, because it's another theory that I am going, but this is the practical implication. Intercultural is a theory. One can say, oh, it's a wonderful theory, but how it's worked, how we do it. So, and we did a research, because we did a research. And we, first of all, we made literature review. There are more than 2,000 publications on intercultural competences. Even if somebody used the word intercultural, that means multicultural in many times, because it was before. And we did also a qualitative study using focus group and semi-structured again interviews with so-called privileged operator. We used the word privileged because we didn't know which word to use, because they were not experts. They were just working in the field of migration and diversity. We said, okay, they have the privilege to work in this field, but we don't know if they're expert. And also participant observation. This is from the ethnology. And important is the research was not just in education, but also in business, law, healthcare. And so we call that in Italy cultural or intercultural mediation. I am lead a master course in this field that was very, very much related and with the master class that I am sharing in Italy, in Verona. And this is, of course, we don't have time to explain it. This is the, at the end, the model. Then I developed, one of the model. You see, I took, of course, from the literature that they say very much. You see, the first of all, knowledge, attitude, and skills. You will find in many publications and many models this. And I try to put in all boxes what I talk to. This is not we as group. It was so important. For example, knowledge and learning other languages. I think it's so essential. People that are bi or multilingual, they are much more open and flexible most of the time. Or learning other culture, traveling is so important. I think it's so really, and so on. Then attitude, openness, sensitivity, decentralization, to try the empathy. Curiosity, to me, was very important. We think, oh, curious is like voyeurism, but it's children are curious, so they will experience it. Just teachers or the parents, I don't ask stupid questions. They say, oh, I don't want this student, and so on. But you see, in the attitude, I put also some theory, because these are not just the intercultural. As human beings, we have some attitude. Now, because today is a problem. Let's make a seminar, a weekend seminar to develop intercultural competences. it doesn't work. And I went back to Pascal. They said, oh, there are sometimes contrary needs. Or Gardner, of course, and I don't need to explain here. Or Albertini is from the neurophysiology. We are working together with him. So the environment is so important. Here, for example, it's wonderful to talk. If I try to talk in the T line, it's nearly impossible because it's too loud, because so many people, you know, this is also one of us. We should interact, but not all of the time in every situation. And then I put, of course, also my theory on fundamental need. We can, of course, add much more theories, but as human beings, we should try to understand it, to invest. And then the skills, communicative, relational, and so on. And this, what is new in this model is that we add two parts. That's on the left, right here. The relationship is so important. If we love somebody, we are much more intercultural competent than when we have stereotypes. When we see somebody is drunk, for example, or is very bad dressed, we are not always competent. And also the external environment. In psychotherapy, we say the setting. And I think also in education it's important how we are sitting. Here, for example, we are in a circle, more or less. In Italy, we have passed on like in the military. You are in rows. You saw that in Verona. They don't stimulate communication. This is just one way, transmitting information and not interaction, you know. And then you see the spiral. There are other models. I didn't invent it. That the competences goes like a spiral. Kind of like the most models say, not the most, the Derdorf, the Houston spiral, said it goes up when we travel or meet other people. But in my research, it's kind of going down as well. If you are in crisis, if we are ill, if we made a bad experience, you know, somebody steals something, or we had an accident, we are not so competent as, I don't know, when we are happy and things like that. I don't know if you have a question to this. Okay, thank you. Then I will go to the conclusion. And yeah, this is a problem, I think, than the measurement. And this is again the standardization, how to measure competence, if it is so complicated. And most of the cases we measure performance and not truly competence, because depend on the day, depend, as I said, on many factors. And then, as I said, kind of going up or down, and sometimes even as I said, in the positive factor, we do need help. We do need help. Now, education is wonderful. Is I think one of the best middle language, but sometimes it's not enough. That's why people need mediation, needs the help from some other specialists. Okay, then let me go. And here also, we published another book with Carl Grant on intercultural competences, not just education. Okay, so now let's come to the conclusion. So, what is saying global, multicultural, interdependent society is necessity and urgency to develop. First of all, you will be surprised, I use the adjective stable. Stable, because I think we need to be stable. We don't have roots. We can discuss long. Many people said, oh, migrants, they get ill because they lose their roots. They lose their identity. This is often, I don't think we do have the roots, but we do need a kind of stability in our identity, not to be like a flag in the wind. But in the meantime, open to diversity, open to the different situations, and so on. That's what is the meaning of your intercultural identity. To be able to interact inside yourself. Yeah? Kristeva, perhaps you know from French, Julia Kristeva, she's the psychoanalyst, strange to herself. Sometimes we have some parts, then we remove or we neglect. You know, that's, but they are in us, some parts. So it's important to treat in dialogue. And And we do need also intercultural competences, in my opinion, in education and mediation, psychotherapy, in all, I think in all part of our life. So this is the last slide, I promise. Globalization collocate us all in the same boat. Kofanan said that, but there are also many other, we are in the globalization, all in the same boat. I think that's a good analogy. But intercultural identities, in my opinion, are those facing conflict. This is the big issue today, not through weapons, as I said, and not through power, because sometimes we use power structure. I am the boss, I don't express open, but I expect this, so I decide what to do. And no, we should try to develop more related to human beings strategy, but respecting also, this is to me humility, they don't have the opportunity to talk, like the natural other people, they are not so able, like we are talking, let's talk, so let's express the self, the fruit. And we need also to share the same hope as humanity. This is my conclusion. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
We'll open that up for questions.
Yeah. Plus, now I can sit down here.
Yes, you can sit there.
Yeah, so
Make yourself
everybody
comfortable.
can see me.
Please.
Thank you. Thanks very much for the presentation.
Thank you.
I was curious to, yeah, I cannot, I agree more with the idea that education and intercultural education especially is this vehicle for, against dogmatism, nationalism, ethnocentrism. At the same time, we're living in a time where nationalism and ethnocentrism are, gaining ground and popularity. And I saw in one of your models, there is a box that is external environment. That's probably where we can make sense of how this resurgence of reactionary politics is affecting intercultural education. So, in a time in which differences are not far from being accepted, they are rejected, and the notion of belonging we have been seeing diffusing. There is a very exclusionary view of who belongs and who's not. So I was wondering how specialists of intercultural education are grappling with this development in contemporary politics.
Yeah, that's a very good question, very central, also political central. And of course, I am not going to speak about the situation here, because as you rightly say, there is all over the world. We live in Italy, for example, in Europe, there's more and more. In my opinion, maybe we are talking yesterday, they are kind of waves, there was a waves of being together, of, I would say, internationalism, I will call it just in one word, European together, and talk. And now we are at a time when that humanity tried to divide, the politics try to evoke, I'm going to say, I would say prejudice, stereotypes against other people, and is a tendency, I think, to divide people. So the problem is, I think, in the first level would be a political problem, because as I said, we do need education, but all this, how can I express this, less democratic or some regime, they don't pay attention to education. They don't invest in education, as you said. If the environment is important, if there is no money, if a teacher are paid so bad, the best person don't choose to go and teaching a human being, other pupils, So, and how can we solve the problem? I think the problem, democracy is based on consensus, Then I think as educators, we made, I don't know if you agree, we made the mistakes.
Don't have to agree, but go ahead.
Yeah, but we made the mistakes that we didn't let other people understand us, how important education is. I think this was also in our responsibility. So that the most population said, oh, if somebody tell me you have problems because they are immigrants, I believe that and I vote this person. I don't know if I am clear, I understand. If we would pay more attention to communication, to let other people talking, for example, in Italy, I don't talk over here, but why? So the majority vote for Meloni. I was so surprised in Italy. And I think we need to understand that the singular person which are the problem, the issue, This is to prepare the basis for me. And after that, of course, we should try to work interculturally, because the problem is today, the model is not so very well known. We stopped on the multi-democracy. If you look all over the world, it's much more related to multiculturalism. Everybody lives in peace, but quite
Well,
kind of
in the United States, there has been a very, multiculturalism became the theory of education, in education. And then there was a very, very strong backlash over the last few years against it, a very strong political backlash against it. It was a concerted, like multiculturalism and DEI sort of became kind of intertwined. DEI was the higher ed version, and multiculturalism was the K through 12 version. And there was a very concerted effort against it. Intercultural seemed to be the Canadian and European approach.
North European, because in South Europe is even difficult as well. In Italy.
Please, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm curious, back to your question, so there's a backlash now. So do we, is the approach to play dead and say, okay, we'll wait for the pendulum to swing?
No.
Or is the impulse, is another approach, and I don't know what the answer is, frankly, but is another approach to find spaces of resistance where there's a principle here and there are actors who will engage in some way because there's a recognized need. Is there a repackaging of the conversation of this, I don't know what the answer is.
I think we should communicate a bit better how important education is. But because even as I said, the intercultural approach is not very well known, or sometimes it's confused with the multicultural. And if we said, okay, living side by side, it's not enough. It's an achievement, but it's because a human being will interact, and if they are not prepared for this interaction, they go better. That's why many countries, not just in the US, they went back from multiculturalism to monoculturalism. My culture is better than yours. So this is what's happening now in the world. And I think it's a political responsibility, but also a responsibility because I think we didn't communicate effectively. I mean, we as scholars, please.
So first of all, thank you. And I think I'll begin with, where I would agree with intercultural education and its principles. I think dialogue is important. I think listening to one another is important. I think these, multi-perspectivity, all of the things that it leads to are obviously important in educational settings and in a context in which we find ourselves so divided. I wonder, however, intergroup contact theory and intergroup friendship theory and intergroup dialogue are predicated on equal status amongst those who are engaged in the dialogue. My analysis of intercultural education is that there isn't an attention on power, on structures of power, asymmetries of power. So when we come to dialogue or when we attempt to engage in intergroup contact, it's really important to recognize that we don't come to that without differences in power. And so I guess, could you speak a little bit about, I'm a critical multiculturalist, and I think that multiculturalism isn't about living side by side. It has introduced the very important dynamic to the study of these asymmetries of power, right?
Yes,
And it's
yeah.
introduced into the curriculum.
Yes,
You know,
yeah.
when Carola's talking about DEI, you know, it's introducing voices, narratives,
Right.
knowledge that, you know, that wasn't present
Yes.
before.
Yeah,
And in Italy, as you know, right, it's almost impossible to come to dialogue
yeah.
when so many of the people who live amongst us, who are born in Italy, for example, don't have citizenship.
Yes, as I
So
said,
what-
this is the context.
Right,
again.
and so intercultural education is a very powerful interpersonal model, right, which is important, the way we treat each other, the way we
Yeah,
talk to each other.
right.
But from my perspective, it's lacking its capacity to think about social change, because that
Yes.
will require some political
Yes.
conversation.
Yeah. Yes, thank you for this question. Because first of all, I think I try to explain the concept as I see and define, but all over the world, there's a huge confusion of people. I didn't say, for example, that some friends of mine, for example, James Banks or Carl Grant and some other, they also have the category of dialogue in the multicultural education. So instead of changing paradigm, they use the same, and also what you said. So it's very difficult. In Italy, for example, in other countries, they use the intercultural model. They think we're doing intercultural school is just making folkloristisch evening, and they call that intercultural. So it's a huge confusion. But I think we do need a truly intercultural education. That's what I say to express. To your statement, is that proper?
Sorry.
Oh,
Let me
sorry.
close it. There are some people on Zoom. who
Ah,
wanna ask
sorry.
questions. That's okay.
There, but if we can go back to the model,
Yeah.
because this is so, for example, I include power, and I am one of the people, you see, where is this, what we call it? Mediation, okay. You see, after curiosity, I put humility. Today, if we talk about humility, we become scared because we think on the time past that we had to serve, I don't know, the boss or the father as a woman or the man. To me, humility is to be aware of the power. As educator, as counselor, we do have a lot of power. So, and of course, you're right. We should try to overcome these power differences. This is a political issue again. Education is important, but can never do everything. Some changes shouldn't happen outside in the politics because the democracy is political. But even though we can try to understand the power situation. So if we are powerful because of the status, we are teacher, we are the boss, we are the parents, or because of the language. Sometimes we don't understand. The language is also related with power. Some people are very effective in their own language, other people are less, perhaps because less educated, less in the school, but also we know from different intelligences, or with immigrants. Immigrants, they are not stupid. I know from many parts, I experience this, And if you look, if you make a small experiment. If somebody doesn't speak very well English, immediately, ahead comes this kind of minor, if not stupid, because we are human beings.
Perceived IQ goes down.
This is really perceived. We don't think, okay, many immigrants, children, they can speak 3 or 4 languages fluently at school in the research that I made, all the way this impression that you are not good enough. Instead of saying, oh, you are immigrants, your mother language. I explained, we were talking about that. My first language was not Italian, was Sicilian. I spoke Sicilian with my parents. I spoke Sicilian with my friends. So Italian was for me a foreign country. Italy in 1861 was colonized out of Italy, from north of Italy, from Piedmont. I realized that in New Zealand, when I worked with Maori, So I came to the school and the teacher treated me as stupid. And they told my mother, oh, you know, your son shouldn't perhaps proceed in the school because he should go to war. And she didn't understand that I just couldn't speak Italian because it was a foreign language for me. It was, of course, related, but in some part very, very different. So that's what I am saying. We should change the society. That's power is at least recognized. Today it's very hidden who has the power and who's not. We say, oh, we live in freedom. We are all the same, all equal. But if we look, we are not really equal. And there are big differences all over the world. But besides that, in every situation, in every interaction, we should be aware. And if we have the power, humility means going on the same level, not going down, of course, but to be aware I am up, I am much higher than that. So give the opportunity to speak, give more time, encourage somebody to speak if there's a difficult and things like that. Okay.
We have 2 questions on Zoom, so
Yes, great.
can we unmute one of them, Andrina?
Andrina, can you unmute, please? Netcaria?
Maybe I can do
She's in Greece.
She's in Greece?
She's in Greece.
Oh,
Yeah, she's a colleague.
uh-huh.
Now you can hear me. Hello.
Ken, welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm very happy to know that today, Agostino, we are colleagues and we are working together at the National Association for Intercultural Education. Is having this very enlightening lecture there. The term of competences, as Agostino tried to connect it today, I think is a very important topic in order to show the importance in synergies in different societies and multicultural environments, especially today in times of polarization. I'm also talking because we have in our mind that the journal, where I'm the editor-in-chief of Intercultural Education, that this term is not very well known or popular in America. But the term intercultural competencies is a term that maybe could shed some light in difficult times, as we believe, at least in Europe, because, well, it promotes dialogue. It gives prominence to some competencies that we have to gain as human beings, no matter what our identity is. And it also has a very specific aim of showing the very important aspect of belonging and working effectively and having a kind of inclusion at societies in order to gain stability and peace. So going back to what the lady researcher or colleague said earlier about what we do when we go to the political arena and agenda, yes, I would agree with her that multiculturalism has a more political or sound, let's say, notion as a notion may be combined with diversity, but in order to have this in real terms and in practice for subordinate groups, we have to combine that as a parallel notion together with intercultural competencies and learning. Otherwise, we cannot gain this stability and what we call, let's say, belongingness of different groups. So I'm very happy that Agostino tried today to make this idea as an idea of a new, let's say, perspective for all the intercultural international dialogue. I would like to know if this term is going to have a kind of impact there at other continents outside Europe. Because I know that the term that is now very, very, let's say, prominent is the term diversity, not the term multicultural. So I think it's encouraging to find synergies between the terms or common topos. Anyway, I would like to thank Agostino for this inspiring and enlightening keynote speech. I really understand what is behind all this hard work, the model he promoted, and I do believe that we could find ways as academics at different countries to shed light on these terms. Unfortunately, I'm now, I can't see you. I have no video. Just, I don't know if you can hear my voice, but I really enjoyed your question.
Yeah, we can.
Very clear question.
Excellent. I really enjoyed your statements and what you said earlier. Also, the colleague that is at the table near the front of the table about these terms. And I'm reflecting on all these terms because we're working as academics and there is no division between the terms. Maybe they mean the same because they aim at belongingness, at inclusion. For example, what's the difference between inclusion and integration? So beyond the terms, what happens is how these terms can help us to overcome polarization and turbulence or the waves that we have in the political arena. And you are living the last days or every day at the continents. It was just a statement that I wanted to say, and thanking you for giving me the opportunity to get connected.
Thank you so much, Magdalia. It was very nice to hear your voice. Yeah, and that's right. I think, thank you. We do need, I think, this terminology. Paulo Freire says words are never neutral. So it's important to find out the right words, and it's important because the words are related with identity. Definize us. No, it's not just, and it's important to find a shared terminology. Today, the problem is this confusion of the using of the three terms. There is lots of misunderstanding. I think this could be one of the main goals, to find a clarification and say, okay, we use this term, this, and then, okay. Right.
I was reflecting on the question, the last question, and the complexity, you presented this very complex model that involves a lot of ideas.
Right.
And these three words, diversity, multiculturalism, interculturalism, all of which are bandied, all of these words are bandied around, highly politicized. The concepts behind them are incredibly important, right? How do we search for spaces or means to increase belongingness, the very fundamental need for all human beings? How do we develop necessary competencies? How do we find ways to work effectively together? I mean, these are things that really, across political differences, it's hard to really disagree if it's packaged properly. It's good for everybody. And, you kind of think about, well, it's your unit of analysis, the unit of groups that you really care about, diverse young people.
Yeah.
Or is it the majority, or, but it's both and, because we all live together, and there are reasons to argue why it's good for both. So, I'm a little bit rambly, but I would say that these basic concepts are really important. I think as we move forward in this difficult time, we may have to think about the languaging, think about the principal fundamental issues that are most important, and figure out clarity about what is essential and how do you measure it, and how do you have practices that are implementable that people can see. Because I love I love all the ideas here, and I kept thinking as somebody who works in schools, like, how would schools even begin to know how to begin to start to do this? And it can't, unless it's clear and simple. It's never going to happen. Anyway, so if I may can add,
I
rambled a tiny bit. But
If I may add a little bit on
Yes.
this, because it's very important, as I said, first of all, we need a shared terminology, and then we need a shared
Definitions.
semantic as well. For example, Matthew, I go, the word education, in the US or in the UK, they use education for school education, mostly. Education is much broader term. I didn't took the time before.
Spanish, educación.
Educazione in Italy, in Europe, we have 3 terms for education. This is important, definitely. We have educazione, and education means taking out the best of the person, also completely different what we are making in the school, but something what is not in the person, like cultural value. This is education. From educere, taking out, and formere, taking care. I care from you, so I taking care of you, I give you something. Then we have teaching, of course, as we call it just teaching, which is related to education. And then we have pedagogy, for example, is very different now. We use pedagogia. Pedagogy we use in terms of philosophy of education. What the English use pedagogy is didactic. You see, it's a huge confusion. And when we talk, we think, the other will
I think we
understand.
understand each other, but we
But
don't.
it's not a fact. And the same is with the 3 terms, for me. Some people use multicultural here in the US. It means also interaction and dialogue, but they're still called multicultural. Multi from Latin means many. It means understanding and respecting, which is completely from the meaning, completely different than interaction. It's not in the term, at least, and trans means common, something which goes through, like transatlantic, for example, the ship and coming here. So we need the terminology. And then, as you said, Carola, we need to develop some strategy to work with this meaning. And this was your question, your very central question. I think we are not in the stage of changing from multicultural to intercultural. In most of the country, this, living side by side is the goal. Sorry, I talked too much, but please.
There's another person.
Another questions.
From
Lina?
Lina?
Thank you so much.
Nice.
Hi,
Thank you.
can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you so much for your insightful presentation, Dr. Agostino, on multicultural education. Your work in this field is incredibly inspiring. I have a question while just going through the presentation and just listening to you regarding the role of multicultural education, fostering inclusivity, particularly in the context of evolving demographic landscape and movement of immigration, like increase of immigration throughout the world. Like, how can multicultural education in schools help maintain and celebrate the diverse cultural identities of immigrant children, especially those with diverse ethnic backgrounds? This is in the light of the growing emphasis now on moving away from a deficit perspective in educational practices. And additionally, I'd like to ask, like, how schools effectively navigate these challenges posed by rising populism or anti-immigrant sentiment in Europe, ensuring that immigrants' children feel valued, included, and supported in a system that often prioritizes being Italian or being German or like any kind of their own national identity over ethnic diversity or cultural diversity. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you for this question. I sit down here because I don't know how the camera is. Yeah, thank you for this question. I don't know if I can manage in so short time, because first of all, I think the word celebrating diversity, I know this is a good achievement. I recognize immigrant, but the problem is again that we have the static idea of identity. But how can I celebrate diversity? Yeah, let's talk about food. Let's talk, I don't know, about dancing or festivities, and those are static. And as I said, identities are dynamic, they're always changing. And I saw in Germany, the immigrant children were treated as ambassador for the country. How can we, a Sicilian child who grew up in Germany, talk
About Sicily.
Yeah, about Sicily, he didn't understand. So the big mistake, I was perhaps in this short time I can answer it, that we made today is related with terms. I think it's a very, very important issue today. We think nationality identity is related with the nation. And this is a big mistake. nation is just one of the point, and not that important in time of globalization and interdependent, you know, which identify those as gender is much more important, perhaps education in terms of school education, political orientation, if you are open to travel to other countries, those categories. Just the problem today is that we still use this nationalistic, and we didn't come forward. I think we should. The first question that we ask when we meet people, where do you come from? How shall I answer this question? I say, I was born in Sicily. Ah, you are Sicilian. And I feel very, because I studied in Rome and I worked in Germany. I lived in other countries in the world. I cannot say to myself I am Sicilian, but in the past I said I am European. Yeah? Intercultural Identity, I published a book and I said, Europei senza Europa, European without Europe. But today it's much broader because we have experience in many other countries in the world. So I think we should overcome this definition. What we are. Are you Italian or are you German? And then we answer, I am half and half because my father. Can identity be mathematics? It is also stupid and sorry to ask the question, but how can we identify with number? We cannot say it's true. I am 20% Sicilian, 14% German. We should overcome these categories. We do need categories, of course. That is,
But is that the most salient?
but it must be dynamic. You know, if we say I was born in Sicily, it's a fact. I live in Verona now. A colleague of mine, they invited me in Richmond, and then I asked him, he comes from Verona, and I asked him, yeah, do you feel now as Veronese that you live long enough? I was very embarrassed, because I tried to be kind to him, but I couldn't say yes, and I couldn't say no. I tried to explain him, and he was kind of offended of this a little bit. No, I don't think, because he's a very, very clever person, and but I was very embarrassed to explain in short time is so difficult. So that's why I'm saying this dynamic aspect. We should say we make pictures. We don't need picture, but so Italian, German, one with degree, engineer, or like that. But we should be aware they are just picture, and life is like a film, like develop. This, I think, in my opinion, should be the solution.
I guess, may I just,
I don't know if somebody else.
We only have 4 minutes left.
Yes.
So
Yes,
I
that's
don't
not
have
much.
spoken.
Please feel free. There are no stupid questions. There are just stupid answers. Please.
No.
Yeah, please.
This question is very quick. First, thank you for the presentation. In the model of universal fundamental needs of human development, you use the word continuity to describe not being forced or coerced into concealing parts of one's self, of identity. Why did you choose the word continuity specifically, just out of curiosity?
Yes, I choose, it's difficult. Categories and words are difficult. I choose continuity because I saw that's in the negative factors. If you remember, many youth, they were forced. Yeah? If you love me, you should be like me. The family or the teacher do that sometimes as well. You should behave like me, you shouldn't, And this is a broken, much worse, and it's not related to immigration because it's a loyalty conflict. Of course, I need your love. I said it's my basic need, but I need to be congruent with myself. So that's and continuity is for me not to keep everything that we have, but to build on it. I can change my mind. I can change. But I should continue in the development. This is the main. Thank you for this question. Continuing development. Don't break the development. And then you bring people back or in another part where the are not.
did you want to make?
No.
Okay.
You had another
Yeah, so
question.
go ahead.
Sorry, yeah.
No, just, I think that, it's important for us to continue to talk to each other, because I think that sometimes we are thinking, we are building ideas, and for example, interculturalists sometimes understand multiculturalist in a very static way.
Yeah.
So that, for example, I love your idea of intercultural identity.
Mhm.
And likewise, we think about intersectional identity. So
Yeah,
there's,
right, right.
so multiculturalists don't think of identity as one dimensional. We also think about gender, sexuality,
Right,
socioeconomic status, all that we are a complex, we are complex
right.
beings, and these identities intersect and all of those things. So I love that there's lots to, there's so much in common. And I guess I hope that we can build these ideas without
Yes.
doing so on a misunderstanding
Yes,
of each
yeah.
other's models.
Yeah, then this was the answer to me, to your colleague Daniel Gwen. This is our responsibility to make it
Yeah.
clear, not to be, honest, say the German. And you say, oh, we are the professor, we don't need to do. No, we should try to get consensus and dialogue. Not in every situation. If you look to the war situation in Israel and Palestine, multicultural would be, I think, the biggest achievement today. But when and if possible, we should go beyond that. Multiculturalism is a huge goal, but it's not enough. And the situation is shared, because when we have conflict, then we go back. And this is, in my opinion, what's happening today, because the multicultural was not able to manage all the differences in adequate way and all the conflicts. And this would be one of the explanation. And people are angry now. They said, oh, we are so dirty. Yeah, I make the example again. Why shall I go to the underground and have these people that are drunk, that sing, or that they take my money? And people get, I think, yes.
Engage in otherization.
Yeah, and somebody tell, I give you the solution, said, okay, then I go through, like in the past with the dictator.
Well, thank you so much for your wisdom
Thank you.
and thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. So wonderful in the end talking with you, really.
I have to run to another meeting. but I'm so
Thank you so much.